Right, so as you know, Rob and I got together and because we both felt that with so much going on in Maslow and the world and everything, really, it felt like disappointment was rife everywhere, and we both really felt that it was important to be able to deal with it, to learn how to deal with it, and really important as well, learning how to deal with it. And when we sat and chatted about how we approached, dealing with disappointment, it became very clear that we both had the same ideas and views about it. Even though we both are, we're very different. We're very different ages, very different backgrounds. Rob is going through things at the moment, and I'm the one basically who's sort of been there and done that and got the t-shirt sort of things. And so it from the very beginning, it actually felt like God was with this little mini-series. And thank you, Rob, for starting us off last week. It was brilliant. If anybody wants to challenge my authority to speak on this subject, let me just go through in chronological order the issues that I've had to deal with in my life. So we're looking at divorce, sudden death, suicide, divorce, redundancy, cancer, redundancy. Is now home. So is that on and off? Because it was doing that last week as well. Yeah. I don't know whether it's the connection, but yeah. So as you can see, I've been through quite a lot. And but first of all, let's just remind ourselves of what the definition of disappointment is before I go any further. And I've entitled this "Lessons Learned," by the way, because this is the lessons I've learned. Okay, this isn't coming from a textbook or anything. This is my personal perspective of what I have learned over the past 40 years, something like that. So if we look at the definition of disappointment, of being disappointment, it's basically unhappy or discouraged because your hopes or expectations about something or someone were not satisfied. Okay, and there's many other similar words to that. If we look at these synonyms up here, so these are lots of different words that can be said instead of disappointment. And I'd be very surprised if there was someone who could look at this list and not say that they had felt at least one of these feelings at some point in their lives. And I think I've probably been through the whole list in the course of my lifetime so far. And it's not a good state to be in. It's not good. And it's something that we have to address, because there's lots of things that we need to learn through dealing with disappointment. I mean, and also disappointment is very challenging for us. It can be very destructive. It can basically war with our view of God, because it can warp how we're thinking about him, how we read, what we read about, and what we view and hear. And when when we're disappointed, we start to maybe believe God is the reason through wrong theology and wrong teaching. Or when we read the Bible, we can say, "Oh well, this God is punishing me. I did this, so that's why I'm being this. I'm a bad person." And then there's all that negativity that goes with us. So this is quite a strong thing, this God is punishing or testing us. This is something you sadly hear a lot of Christians, shouting out to people who maybe live a lifestyle that they don't approve of, or have had things go wrong with them. They will say, that's because God's punishing you. And this anger towards God, it can also, it can lead to self-pity, to depression, unforgiveness. We become hardened in our view. We make bad actions and bad decisions because we're not in a good place. And the worst thing of all, which is why we're talking about it tonight really, is because it can lead to that separation from God, that most important person in our lives. So as Christians, we have to learn to manage our disappointments, otherwise we are going to miss out on this full and loving relationship that we have with God. The way God made the world means that it's a changing environment, and it's got many challenges. And we only have to watch what's going on with the weather and the climate at the moment to see that. And the way God made humans means that they have a choice in how they face these challenges. And it's often the case that these challenges and or our choices can lead us to feeling all those emotions that are associated with disappointment, those things here. So the first, I'm going to go into the first lesson, which I've learned, okay? So for me, the first lesson is that disappointment is inevitable and necessary. I've found two quotes which kind of sort of, I think, sum up what I mean by that. They're just quotes I got from a blog, actually. One is Christian and one non-Christian, but I think they're saying what I want to say to you here. And the first one is, God never gave us a roadmap, never gave us a how-to manual, a list of instructions, a set of definite plans, never said he'd monitor our every footstep, our every decision, our every turn. He never said he'd control us to the point that we couldn't take steps on our own, never promised all carefree days without any struggle or pain. And in the second quote, it says, grief as it has evolved may well be a disadvantage, but it has been eclipsed in the human story by the vast advantages conferred by love, teamwork, and mutual support. Without these kinds of attachments and the grief we feel at their loss, we may never have developed physically and culturally into the evolutionary success story that we are. So I think that's, for me, that it was a big lesson to learn, because especially as a Christian, to understand that disappointment, that things going wrong are inevitable, not just because I haven't gone to church every Sunday for the past 5 weeks or something. I mean, that's just a silly example. You have to be reminded that there's stuff that happens in life that we have had no control over. There is also stuff in life that we have made a choice about, a bad choice, but often that is influenced by things that are beyond our control. But also, all these things that have gone wrong in our life make us what we are today and are necessary. They were necessary for me because if it wasn't for everything, for that long list that I'd been through, I wouldn't be standing here today in a state where I am probably closer to God than I've ever been to in my life. And I have learnt so much. I have gained so much. I'm not saying I enjoyed the experience, but and I know that there was things about my personality and my lifestyle that I needed to change. And in many cases, you know, things need to happen, sometimes quite serious things need to happen to make us address those changes. And also, and the thing is, so once we accept that, you know, disappointment is inevitable and necessary, we then have to work out how are we going to deal with it. And that's the important thing, because we have to deal with it, and how we deal with it affects the rest of our lives, really. So the second lesson I've got for you today is it's okay to be upset. And that took me a while to learn, because I went through the Christian thing where, I shouldn't be worried, I shouldn't be, I should just give it to God and everything. And if I was praying and everything, and I was close to God, I wouldn't be feeling all these things. I wouldn't be sorrowful and mournful and depressed and unhappy and bitter and angry. I wouldn't be all through those things. But the fact is, we have to go through a process of grief when things happen. They're called the stages of grief, and it's a necessary process we need to go through. And as a Christian, also, it's a learning process as well for us. And the first stage of this grief is denial. I remember, saying to God, but I'm a good Christian. I did this, that, and the other. Why is this happening to me? I'm being told. And there's denial in lots of other ways. I remember my brother coming to my work and telling me my mum had died. And I'd seen her that weekend, and then suddenly she was dead, and that's denial. And it's like, what's going on? And you just, you can't take it in, you can't understand what's happened. I mean, you remind yourself of Psalms like Psalms 37:4, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, things were going wrong in my life, and it certainly was not the desires of my heart. And that's a challenge to you as a Christian. What's going through, and you have to work through that. You feel, the second thing you feel at stages is this anger as well. Why? Why is it, this has happened to those people? They're good people. Now, one other thing Rob and I have in common is that we both love Ecclesiastes. And I'm going to use a verse that he used, Ecclesiastes 7:15. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. I so relate to that verse, and I've so been there. And I've watched my son and daughter-in-law, grieving because they couldn't have children, and yet watching people dropping babies just like that, who personally, they would argue didn't deserve to be, gifted with a child. And those sort of feelings are common. And then as a Christian, it challenges you to look at God and look at the teachings of Jesus and go back to the words. And God, if you read the Bible, it doesn't say that, just because we're good, we're going to get everything. It's not a prosperity gospel. Disappointment is inevitable and necessary. And then we go into the next stage, which is the bargaining stage, the next stage of grief, Oh, but Lord, I'll go to church more often, I'll read my Bible more and all that sort of thing. Oh Lord, come on, can we do a deal here, please? Habakkuk 2:1 says, Habakkuk expected an answer to come from God, thinking, well, if God answers this way, then I'm going to respond to him this way. And if he says this other thing, then I will reply to him this other way. And we hear in, Abraham bargained with God. There was bargaining and saying, God, please save these people. And God has answered that prayer. But God hasn't answered every prayer, the same way that God has answered Andy's prayer for healing for his mum, but hasn't answered everybody else's, And that's because God, again, does not promise that in their life, We can't bargain with God like that, Because he doesn't bargain with us. He gives you your love. He gives you his love and support and care. And he doesn't bargain for it. I'll give you this if you do 20 Hail Marys and all that sort of thing. That's not the way our God works, that we know. And the next stage of grief you go through is depression, and that's, I think, when, as a Christian, it's hard, because Christians aren't meant to be depressed, are they? We're meant to be full of the love of God. Ness will know all about that. That is quite common amongst Christians, that I should be full of the joys of the Lord all the time. But it's okay to be upset, because this is a natural process we're talking about. This is the process that we need to go through. And it's, and we need that sadness and lowness, because that is often the times when we really do reach out to God. And then we're reminded of the verses like this, 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Okay? In our weaknesses, we reach out to God. In our weaknesses, we open ourselves more to God. And that way allows God to work more in us and to come closer to us and to come alongside us and care for us. And then finally we get to the end of this process, and it's acceptance. Acceptance that life is not what we wanted it to be. Acceptance that life is not going to be what we want it to be. Acceptance that this is how my life is at the moment. And then we just have to basically just trust in the Lord then. There is this verse, Matthew 26:39, nevertheless, not what I want, but what you want. That's what Jesus said to his Father. That's what Jesus, the Son of God, said, because in a way he was, asking God, don't let this happen to me. Please take this away from me. But even Jesus could not, avoid what was inevitable and necessary. He had to go to the cross. And I think it was okay for him to be there. He was human. Jesus was human. And how could you not be upset about what he was going to have to go through? And he knew, it's being upset is okay. I'm a big fan of crying, a big fan. And sometimes I just put on a soppy film just to let it all out, because, God made us the way we are. And grieving is a process that we need to go through. But through the grieving process, we can also then move on through our life, and get on with our life afterwards. And if we didn't grieve, it meant we didn't care about anything or anyone. And that's not what God wants from us. He doesn't want automatons, mindless people with no emotion. He made us emotional. He made us to care and feel. So the last lesson for today, this third lesson that I've learnt, there's lots more, but I don't have the time. And that is, life is easier with God than without. And that's something I know from personal experience. Because the first half of that list that I went through without God. I wasn't a Christian. I had to draw on my own strengths and what little help and support there was around for me at the time. And there wasn't much at all. And it was hard. It was tough. And then when you go through the following disappointments, and you can talk to Jesus, you've got Jesus in your life, You read the Bible and you know that you're cared for and you're loved despite everything that you have done, that they love you. You learn that there's hope and there's a future. And then you've got God works in amazing ways. He gives you the people, he gives you the resources to help you get through those times which are inevitable and necessary. And it is so different. It's still hard, but it's in a different way. It's to have somebody that you know that you can rely on totally and trust totally in your life when it seems like everyone else around you is just letting you down, is amazing. The best bit of advice I got when I was going through one of my difficult times was to hold on to that rock, and the rock's Jesus. Hold on to him and don't let him go. Didn't matter how bad the storm raged around me, hold on to him. And I did, and I think there was at times my fingernails were bleeding from holding on to that rock. But it was the best thing that I could do, because the waves calm, and God kept me afloat. He kept me afloat. Isaiah 41:10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." And the Bible is full of verses like that, where God's promise is to be with you, strengthen you and help you through all those times that you're going to go through that aren't good. And he's with you in the good times as well, which is lovely. I want to go back to, so last week Rob introduced this list, and I wanted to go back to and revisit it because I was looking at it again, and it feels like in a way it's almost like the grief process going through. The first thing he wrote was expectancy, not expectation, and that really is it kind of fits in with disbelief and anger, and it's grieving for our plans. I had many ideas about how my life was going to work out, and somebody said to me once, "Oh, you're going to be happily married living in a semi-detached in Isha," and I actually at the time I was a bit upset about that because I thought, well, I'm not going to be a typical woman like that. But the truth was, I really would have quite happily liked that, at the time. And that didn't work out, all I've ever wanted was to be, have a nice home and a nice family and a loving husband. And, I didn't get all of that, but I've got a lovely family, and I have a home, which is more than a lot of other people can say. And then Rob talked about core truths and wider reviews. So this is, we're actually revisiting what actually God promises. So this is the bargaining and understanding the bigger picture. When I was told, hold on to God, the first thing I did was just read anything and everything I could about God. Immerse myself in the words of Jesus, in the words of Paul, in what other wise Christians had said. I immersed myself with that and realised that it's not about bargaining, that's not what it's around. And then it's narrative and thankfulness, to being grateful for what we have rather than what we don't, And so I think when you're depressed, I know sometimes it doesn't help to remind yourself of what you have got, what you haven't. But what I found did actually help was doing things for others, working with other people. Who were maybe also grieving or having a hard time, and just coming alongside them and listening to them, taking your mind off of what's going on in your life for a moment, and just, focusing on other people. And then there's other-centeredness and divine intimacy. So it's focusing on our relationship with God, making that the priority rather than the bigger house and the better job and everything. And that's the acceptance, of what God has given us, what our life is, rather than what we want it to be, and being content with that. And even if it's not where you want to be, there's the comfort in knowing that if it's a difficult time, things will get better. When you've come to this point of acceptance, it's easier then to just say to yourself, if it's God's will, that will be. And I've had, I'll have to, I'm trying to do this at this point, and I've got this biggest grin on my face because, middle of March, I had to take voluntary redundancy. I couldn't really do the job anymore, and I didn't really want to work because there's lots of other things I wanted to do, but you have to be seen to go to work, to look for work, because otherwise you don't get any money, you don't get benefits. So, I was sort of caught, and I just said, oh well, God, if it's your vision for me to be off work, then I won't be successful in my applications, and if you want me to get a job, then I will be successful. And this has been going on, and we're into like mid-November now, and I was starting to think, well, this is good, because I had this. I said to myself, I've laid down quite some strict things, like I only want to work if I can still carry on supporting my family and my church, and so you wouldn't believe how difficult it is to fit that in around the jobs that are out there. And blow me if I didn't, apply for a job on Friday actually. No, Thursday. I got an email on Friday inviting me for an interview yesterday, and went along. And I've never had an interview. I've never known God's presence in an interview so much as He was. And it was 2 days a week, which was lovely. At British Heart Foundation, the charity shop. I always wanted to work in one of those in Kingston. And it started off with her saying, oh, well, you need to do one day and every Saturday. And my face just like fell. I was like, oh, God, not every Saturday again. And then I go, yeah, no. And then she goes, well, how about half a Saturday? She's going. I said, oh, yeah, well, that would be better, And then we're chatting away, and then she's going, well, how about just Thursday and Friday? She's going. I'm not looking at her thinking, and she goes, I really want you. She said, I'm just looking at the board, and I'm thinking, I really, and I was just like, I was like, oh my goodness. And, and that was it. It came out, and I got a job working the days I want to work. And it came out, and it was just like, oh my, I'm really, and it turned out, and I said to her, about, it was Thursday, and I was saying back what we were doing, and it turns out she was a believer as well. So she was totally with me in the, the not wanting to. And so I have got a job. I don't have to go to the job centre anymore. You know what that's like, don't you, Roger? So that's great. But I can still, be able to do what I want. So, I just trust it to God. And things happen. Things happen in His term, His time, everything. I'm running out of time now. But what I want to say is, so there is this process that we need to go through. We're dealing with our disappointment as Christians, Well, as humans, we need to go through it, and as Christians, we need to go through it with also dealing with our faith as it is at the time. The problem comes is when you get stuck on one of those stages. And I just want to say that, when you get stuck on one of those stages, when you're stuck, say anger, you can't get past that, or maybe at the depression area, that is the time that you need to seek help, because the idea is that you go through this process. You know, there's a reason the Victorians had this year of mourning, because it's traditionally, you know, you're going through all the anniversaries. But it shouldn't be going on. This time of grieving shouldn't be going on for years and years and years. People need support if it is. We sang a song with a different tune that I didn't quite get, but there we go. The Lord's my shepherd. That's Psalm 23. And then it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, I've highlighted the words there. He refreshes my soul. And because that's what, you know, the words of Jesus do to me. That's what my relationship with Jesus does. It refreshes my soul in no way, in a way so much better than a glass of wine or a meal out or a spa visit, because it refreshes my soul daily, and it helps me to accept the life I've been given. And I wanted us to end today with it's a very old song, but it is my anthem as far as I'm concerned, and it'll be played at my funeral. And because it focuses on this soul. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like seas billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Amen.